In a recent family conversation, I said that I was raised by hippies. And my mom said, I object, we were not hippies. So I asked her why not, and her reply was, because we had jobs. This is a picture of me and my dad on the plaza in downtown Arcata, California in 1979. You make the call. But despite appearances, my parents were not out selling weed and chasing the Grateful Dead in a school bus. They were pioneers in the cooperative movement, imagining and creating new ways to exchange goods and services, ways that don't exploit human labor or natural resources. During my childhood, we were part of a child care cooperative, so parents in our friend group didn't have to pay for childcare. Instead, one parent would take the kids while the others went to work, and they coordinated their schedules that way. It didn't just save money, it also built a strong sense of community. Now, when we go grocery shopping at the food co-op, it's a big store with employees and a board of directors and all of that. But I remember the kids' playroom at the Ashland Food Co-op, because that's where I'd hang out while my mom stocked the shelves and worked at the cash register. Not as an employee, but as a member owner who didn't work for money, but for the communal economic benefit of wholesale food prices. That was not hippie utopian idealism. It was strong economic policy at the grassroots level. I'm going to explain why the employer-employee model of doing business is one of the driving forces behind global climate change, and how cooperatives can easily replace exploitation with regeneration. We say that we abolished slavery long ago, but you may have seen this image already. This is chocolate production. But what about the fact that right now, billions of people on Earth are stuck in insurmountable poverty, working long hours for payment that doesn't meet their basic human needs, while their employers get rich? What is that called if it's not called slavery? Maybe it has another name. And what about freedom from tyranny? The story goes that the colonies fought the Revolutionary War, developed our democracy, and now we self-govern, of the people, by the people, for the people. Yet every day, employees are subjected to the tyranny of employers who have the power to dictate their actions, take the value of their labor as their own, and cast them out on the street jobless if they don't perform well for their profits. That is certainly not democracy. So what is it called if it's not called tyranny? Maybe it has another name. We measure the success of business and the health of the economy based on growth. If it's growing, it's doing well. And yet we all know that to grow our businesses and expand our so-called healthy economies, we must exploit our natural resources, further driving catastrophic climate change, mass extinction, and the genocide of indigenous peoples. We can't call this a successful business plan for healthy economies. It's got to be called something else. And it does have a name. It's called capitalism. Capitalism is the driving force behind global climate change. And what's really interesting is that with just a small shift in the way that we organize business, we can combat global climate change and the exploitation of people without getting rid of the community marketplace. In a capitalist system like ours, business owners whose profits depend on keeping expenses as low as possible are naturally incentivized to pay their employees as little as possible and to pay as little as possible for materials so that they, the owners, can take home more of the profits. That's capitalism done well, and it is how every successful business person has made their riches. It is quite literally business as usual. Now, I can imagine that there are business owners out there right now saying things like, I care for my employees, I treat them like family, and I pay them as much as I can. That is wonderful. So what would happen if your employees became owners and they had the power to set their own wages and the power to decide the direction of the business in the future? What if you became their equal and businesses made decisions democratically? What if profits were distributed equitably to everyone who works there? Virginie Perrotin, who's a professor of economics at Leeds University Business School and was a senior research economist at International Labor Office in Geneva, has an answer to those questions. She says, solid, consistent evidence across countries, systems, and time periods shows that worker cooperatives are at least as productive as conventional firms, and more productive in some areas. The more participatory cooperatives are, the more productive they tend to be. But the productivity of worker-owned cooperatives is not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to show you that small local movements that help existing businesses become worker-owned and help new worker-owned businesses start are a key, a fundamental key to environmental and social justice. In the midst of this growing ecological and social catastrophe, we know that we must seek radical new ways to reduce carbon emissions and build a just and equitable society. Yet many people watching this TEDx talk right now have never considered the possibility that the employer-employee consumer model of doing business is one of the root causes of the problems facing us today. And that's why worker-owned cooperatives make so much sense. Instead of private ownership, in a worker-owned cooperative, there's shared ownership, which means shared responsibility and shared reward. In that environment, we make different choices. We think about the consequences of our actions. Instead of marketing basic human needs to the highest bidder, cooperatives around the world are creating just and equitable utilities, food supply chains, and waste management systems. Instead of maximizing profits for shareholders by paying as little as possible for labor and resources, cooperatives distribute their surplus to the worker owners and keep resources local. The existing global cooperative economy has more than 1 billion members. It generates equitable income for 10% of the world's population. Consumer cooperatives support sustainable sourcing for their products, and they educate people about responsible consumption. Housing cooperatives help ensure dwellings are safe and prices are not market-driven. Utility cooperatives are creating cleaner electricity and rural access to energy and water. Worker and social cooperatives provide goods and services in an eco-friendly way while creating long-term, sustainable jobs. At Cooperation Humboldt, our community health worker program is designed to create cooperative jobs for the chronically underserved members of our community. And right now, I'm helping a local bakery that uses locally produced grains become worker-owned, while simultaneously helping local farmers envision a farming cooperative to supply those grains. These connections are essential for our regenerative future. They keep money and resources local and sustainable. Back in the day, when my not hippie parents were at work, and my not hippie elementary school teacher, in addition to teaching me how to read, also taught me something that became fundamental to my sense of self. And it turns out it's fundamental to the cooperative ideology. He taught me that I am the boss of my own body. We would recite it in class like a mantra. I am the boss of my own body. And it made me feel powerful, because being your own boss is powerful. As a person raised in an environment of cooperation and mutual aid, taught to stand up for my own freedom to choose, I implore everyone to start thinking about business by looking at the root meaning of the word economy, which is care for home. How we care for our home now will determine the future, not only of the human race, but of all life that is yet to be driven to extinction by capitalism. This is not merely a TEDx talk. This is a call to action. By forming and supporting local worker-owned cooperatives, we replace the exploitation and extraction of capitalism with regeneration, freedom, and care. We become the bosses of our own bodies.